Welcome to Save As Ability, a podcast to educate and inform you about disability employment issues. My name is David Darkangelo, and I'm your disability policy expert.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back for another episode of Save As Ability. Well, we're coming upon the 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So we're going to do a little bit of like a two-parter here this week and next week, because I think most loyal viewers and listeners know that we tape usually a couple weeks ahead of time, a week or two sometimes. So I think today's the 14th. I think it's coming up in like a week or so, right? So we're going to focus on two main aspects of the Americans with Disabilities Act in Title I, which is employment. And so we'll get right into it. So today we're going to be talking about reasonable accommodation and particularly undue hardship under the ADA, because that's a lot of times that when organizations are complained against by people with disabilities, and ultimately it either goes to court or the EEOC usually is like where it goes, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. That's when like the companies are saying, well, this was an undue hardship. And, the people are saying they didn't provide for me, failure to accommodate, which, by the way, failure to accommodate is the number one finding. And among all of the groups that get discriminated against, women and Black and all of the other minority groups that get discriminated against, gender, religion, all of that, people with disabilities is usually the largest group. And if not the largest group, it's right up there. It's historically, in terms of the cases that get heard, both on the state level and on the federal level, people with disabilities is like the number one or among the largest. And then reasonable accommodations and or failure to accommodate is usually like one of the largest. The EEOC produces what they call charge statistics, and that those indicate that failure to accommodate is usually one of the largest reasons why the employers are found deficient, I guess is the way to put it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Let's start with some big principles, like things that are laid out in the ADA, like the interactive process that basically says this is a legal and ethical imperative put out by the ADA. And it's basically where the person with the disability, the employee with a disability, and the employer need to engage in this interactive process, this back and forth. In other words, it's not just the employee saying, I want this and nothing else, and my way or the highway. And it's not just the employer saying, no, these are our policies and procedures and you must meet them. No, there's got to be a back and forth, this interactive process. And that's outlined very, very well. The EEOC has guidance on that. Ask Jan, EarnWorks. There's a ton of really good free information out there for employees, for employers on how to go about doing this and engage in this interactive process and making sure that it's done well. That's really one of the first steps to asking for your reasonable accommodation and then getting it fulfilled and, going through that interactive process. So the interactive process is not some like box checking exercise. All right. Remember, the ADA is essentially civil rights law. So these civil rights protections are put in place. They're designed to provide fairness both for the individual with a disability and the company and the business. So both for the employee and the employer. And so it is clear, though, that the ADA places the responsibility on the employer, and failure to participate is really a failure of federal law. Like you're violating federal law at that point. Okay. So that's really the teeth it gives individuals with disabilities to not be discriminated against in employment situations. All right, so let's get right into the reasonable accommodation itself. Reasonable accommodations are not meant to be like a one-size-fits-all approach. It's meant to be like broad and dynamic and really provide remedies for each specific instance that the person with the disability is encountering, right? If you show me 1 million people with disabilities, I will show you 1 million separate and distinct instances of the human condition, right? No two people are alike. So reasonable accommodations are hopefully an adjustment for everybody's individualized arrangement that they have with their disability, I guess is the way you can put it. So it encompasses a spectrum of workplace adjustments. And this ranges from things like modified work schedules, remote work, assistive technology, and in some cases, even job reassignment and retraining. Okay. So the intention here isn't to remove the essential job functions. All right. That is very important to recognize here, that the employer has these essential job functions and the employee needs to be able to meet those. Okay. So we've had whole episodes about the meritocracy and, all of this. So that's really important. So we're not lowering the bar standards for people with disabilities or anything like that. No, there's performance standards out there around these essential job functions. And that's fair for both sides, both for the employee and the employer. All right. But sometimes it can become problematic or challenging in the reasonable accommodation process, where sometimes the employer wants to have like this rigid interpretation. And the employee is saying, but wait a minute, I need you to adjust. And, that's where the challenge lies. Okay. That then leads us into this concept of what the employer often refers to as this undue hardship. Like, oh, we can't do it as the employer because we have this thing that, we have this set amount of duties. And so it's a hardship for us to vary from that. All right. Now, again, the EEOC has been pretty clear on this, and you can go to their newsroom. They produce the releases that when employees and employers, when there is an action taken, they issue these press releases that really describe the whole situation. And what you're going to see time and time again is that this undue hardship defense it's intentionally narrow, and it's got to be based on very specific case information and evidence. And, it can't be perceived as like an inconvenience. And like oftentimes it leads to like these generalized assumptions about what it's going to cost the employer. And so that needs to be very well detailed and specified in order for that to succeed. Okay. So employers, I'm reading right from the EEOC guidance. Employers are expected to consider their entire financial resources and operational realities. And the ADA even encourages employers to leverage external resources such as federal tax credits to offset any accommodation costs. Okay. So oftentimes the employer will be like, well, this is a hardship because it's going to cost us more, or we're going to have to hire more, we're going to have to alter our process or whatever. And the federal government is saying, and the EEOC is saying through the ADA, well, wait a minute, you need to be reasonable here and you need to try to accommodate your employee. And guess what? As a business case, that's going to be the best thing for the employer to do anyways, oftentimes, because you don't want to lose people with talent who understand your organization, who are already in your organization. If you can tweak something to make it better, you probably want to do that. All right. All right. Now let's get into a little bit about the compliance with the ADA and really what this does. If it's done well, the reasonable accommodation process and complying with all what we've just talked about, it really improves workforce participation and ultimately growth. I mean, how many episodes have we where we've talked about real data and studies and, uh, papers that have been done by private business that's saying that sometimes people with disabilities can be your best employees, be your most productive employees, have like lower absenteeism, higher, all the good things are more and all the bad things are less, right? So again, data shows that inclusive practices and including reasonable accommodations increase job retention, broaden your talent pool, and improve business performance. There's a lot of data on that. According to the Job Accommodation Network, or Ask Jan, 49% of workplace accommodations cost nothing. And those who do have a one-time cost, the median cost for that is somewhere around $300. Okay. So these are not break the bank type of things to be able to accommodate a person, keep them productive, keep them in your organization. It's a win-win when done well. All right. So my policy recommendation is foster a culture of inclusion of people with disabilities. Okay. Don't react, but anticipate. And be proactive in terms of what you're doing to communicate with all of your employees, both those with and without disabilities, to let them know that the organization is prepared and very much willing to get into this interactive process to provide reasonable accommodations, because they cost little to next to nothing here to keep your business operations flowing well, to keep your employees of all kinds, by the way, with and without disabilities, functioning well in their job. Again, they've got to be able to do those essential functions of the job, work within that. So to me, it's compliance is proactive, not reactive. The best employers are able to cultivate a workplace and an environment, really a culture that emphasizes reasonable accommodation. And that's not just a best practice. Like, you've got to do it under federal civil rights law, but it also works for your business as well. Okay. So to conclude here, we're talking about engagement, and this doesn't, happen overnight. This is a culture change. You've got to get your talent up to speed on this. Contact us if we can be a resource for you. But this minimizes your legal exposure and really unlocks potential of people in your organization. So again, when reasonable accommodations are done well, it's a win-win. It's a win for the employee. It's a win for the employer. And actually, it's a win-win-win, because it's a win for our society as well, for our economy. All right. So hope this helps. We're going to come back with another one right after this, another episode that is a little bit related. And again, in honor of the 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, we're talking about Title I issues here, employment for people with disabilities. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you enjoy this episode, please like, subscribe, share, comment. That really does help our channel go. So it's David Darkangelo, another episode of Say Visibility, and I hope you have a great day.
For more information about disability employment issues, please visit our website, disabilityemploymentsolutions.com. The Save As Ability podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel at Disability Policy Expert, or wherever you stream your podcasts. Subscribe, stream, rate, and review our shows. Your ratings and reviews help our show reach new audiences. Produced by Pod Pro Entertainment. Save As Ability lives within a network of podcasts located at podproentertainment.com. #The New Radio. Again, my name is David Darkangelo, and I'm your disability policy expert. Until next time, thank you. I hope you have a great day.